Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would do a video on another question that I get quite often is how I name and save my audiobook files. And so I thought it would be a good topic to record and share here on my channel for those of you that have the same question. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get into it. Okay, so if you're a new audiobook narrator or maybe a not so new audiobook narrator, I'm hoping that something in this video will help you to save potential catastrophe somewhere down the road, make things a little bit easier for you and your clients after you're finished. But what I'm going to do is show you today how I name my audiobook files and how I save them. So then that way they're easy to find later, they're easy for the clients to upload later and to make things easier on both of you, really. So I'm going to first hop over to Adobe Audition and show you how this is done. Okay, so we're looking at Adobe Audition. The first thing I do is on my desktop, I create a folder with the title of the book that I'm working on. And then all of the files that I'm going to open now are going to be saved into that folder. So if you take the manuscript that you're working on after you've read through it and you have a good understanding of everything involved within that book, you're going to look at the table of contents. Now, this is the easiest way to do this. If you have a book that is maybe an hour or less long, meaning about 9,300 to 10,000 words, a relatively smaller book, you'll find that the book may not be broken into as many files. It might just be the opening credits, maybe an introduction, the bulk of the book, and then the closing credits, right? Very few files. This works just the same way. But what I do first is I'm going to open a brand new file. All I hit was Shift Control N on my keyboard and it brought up new audio file. The first thing I do is I start with 00, meaning this is the very first file, underscore, and then I'll put in the title of the book, underscore, and then whatever this file is. In this case, it is the opening credits. And I can save this at whatever sample rate I choose at this point, either 44,100 or 48,000 hertz, and then a bit depth of 32 or a bit depth of 16. Obviously, the higher the sample rate and bit depth that you're recording at, the better the quality, but ultimately it needs to be, before you give it to the client or upload it to ACX, it needs to be taken back down to 44,100 hertz, which is this one, sample rate. And then your bit depth needs to be 16. But for when you're recording, I recommend it be higher. You can always change it later. So here is your very first file. Now, the second file, and using the table of contents as a guide, every single section is going to be broken into a separate audio file. So if there's an introduction, that will be its own file. If there's a dedication, acknowledgments, those should be their own file. And then looking at the table of contents again, if there's chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, each chapter is going to be its own file. Now, if there's subheadings within that chapter, they stay within that chapter. You want to separate the files by chapter. So for example, if there's chapter 1 and there's 3 different subheadings within it, they're all staying within that chapter 1 file. Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, we don't need to break it up by subheadings. The only thing that comes to mind that would deviate from this is if that file, let's just say chapter 1 is very, very, very long, and it is over 2 hours long, because the max length of audio time you can have in one file is 2 hours. So if chapter 1 turns out to be about 3 hours long, that's a long chapter, but you can break up that chapter into chapter 1, part 1, chapter 1, part 2, right? You could break it up into 2 separate files. You just cannot have one file exceed 2 hours total runtime. But that very rarely happens. The only other time that you'll see this happen is if it's a book with maybe not a whole lot of chapters in it. It is one big long book, right? A cookbook, for example, is a good example of this. I've had a couple times where I've done a cookbook. Yes, you can make audiobooks out of cookbooks. And I had to break them up by because there weren't any, just to step back a little, I think I'm getting ahead of myself, but there weren't any chapters per se. It was just recipe after recipe after recipe, right? So, and the total runtime was over 2 hours. So I just split it into two separate files. So I had the book part one and then the book part two, really. Unless there's a way that you could break it up in this kind of a situation where there's maybe breakfast, appetizers, dinner, you could probably break it up that way too. But this goes with anything else in the audiobook. Whenever you're in doubt about anything, ask the rights holder. They will guide you. But let's get back to the naming conventions here. So after the opening credits, Shift Control N will open up a new audio file. The next one's going to be 01 underscore title. And then, and then in this case, it's going to be the introduction. Okay, so that is that file. Now over here in the metadata for the title, I'm going to add introduction. Now I know ACX does something like this for you, but I like to do this because it's just a nice little touch I do for my clients. It might be moot, I don't know, but I've always done it and I continue to always do it. The next file, Shift Control N, is going to be 02 underscore the title of the book, right? Underscore. And then let's just say this will be now chapter 1. I just do chapter 1. And then over here, I'm going to actually type out chapter 1 and then the name of chapter 1, because there's usually a name for each chapter, right? So this one would be first chapter, or whatever is there is the name for the chapter. And then so on and so forth, all the way down to the end. And then, of course, your very last file is going to be the closing credits. So let's just pretend this book that we're doing here only has one chapter and an introduction. So then the next file would be 03 underscore title, the title of the book, whatever the title of the book is, and then closing credits. Now, as you have all of these typed out and you have all of the metadata in there, if you choose to do that, then each of these files is going to be saved to that folder that you made, named after the book that you're working on. And one other thing that I wanted to impress upon you is that after you go through and record each of these files, save them as a WAV file, right? And then when you're ready to edit, master, and finish the book, keep that raw WAV file for revisions. Meaning, as you go through that raw WAV file and you take out your retakes, you apply any effects if needed, you do the normalization, you check it with your amplitude statistics. And I have many other videos here on my channel where I go through this exact how to achieve ACX's standards. Once it passes, save it as an MP3. So you would just select whatever file you're working on, save as, you would change the format to MP3, make sure that the sample type, whether you recorded it in 44/100, which would be this one, or 48 or even higher, just make sure that when you're saving it to MP3, save it as 44/100, that you change the bit depth to 16, and you can even save this preset in Adobe Audition here, right? You can, I have it saved as Audiobook. Just makes things faster. And then save it to the folder that you made for the book, and then check it in amplitude statistics one more time just to make sure that it's right. But when you save it as an MP3, you still have the raw WAV file. You have two separate files now. Keep that raw WAV file until the book goes through quality assurance, until the rights holder has reviewed the book and they need no revisions, because it'll be much easier to make a revision on that raw WAV file than it would be a finished MP3. Trust me. Keep both files until the book has gone to retail, right? The rights holder is happy, the author's happy, the publisher's happy. Quality assurance for ACX or whatever platform you're working with, they're happy, and the book is now off and available for retail sale. That is when you can take all your files and move them to external storage if you want to. And naming the audio files this way and keeping the raw wave file has saved me so many times in recording and producing audiobooks. Because if you think about it, after you process the file, you add your effects, you normalize it to -3, and then you save it to as an MP3, it's going to be a lot harder to match up the same sound and then also to get the normalization and get the RMS just right after the file's already processed. So if you can copy the retake for a revision and then insert it into the raw wave file and then save it as a new raw wave file, then do your processing as you would, as if you were producing this book for the first time, it's going to be a lot easier for everything to match up in the end. Trust me. But I hope this helped you. Small little tip, but can save you a whole lot of time and frustration down the road. I get this question a lot, so I thought I would record a quick video to show you how I do it. If you have any other topics that you're just yearning to know my opinion about, or if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about, even in our live Q&A sessions every Tuesday at 12 p.m. EST, come and enjoy our conversations. It's a live chat. Come and chat with me and about 40 other voice artists that join every week. Or if you have an idea or something, again, that you would like to know or something that you'd like to see a video about, then please leave it in the comments down below. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you for your time, and thank you for watching my channel. Please consider liking and subscribing. It really does help. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.